Hello everyone. All right, I'm going to share out this link. I'm going to share it out a few minutes before the New York Open here, just in about 8 minutes. Looking for lower locally as a nice idea, but long from lower. I got to share this link out on Livestream starting now. Twitter and the Discord. All right, we're going to dive into some more complicated ideas in order flow and how I'm sort of speculating around some concepts. But first, let's head over to the TradingView chart and just get some frame of reference for where we are currently at as we head into a new week. So, most of you, I'm sure, follow me either in the Discord or on Twitter and have a pretty good idea of how I've traded into this. I am long from lower, and I also took a breakout long into the weekend that looks like this, but I'm completely removed risk from it. And currently looking for at least these lows to be taken into the New York Open. Willing to carry this, but might add something like this. But of course, all last week, a major idea was to come and take all of these consecutive lows into this level, which is where I took a long. And I shorted down into this. I mean, just actually quite a technically clean breakdown and retest here. And so we can just quickly go over something here, which is, we're going to take a look at order flow. I want to see some liquidity wiped out on the ETFs, and I'm going to explain that locally here. Pretty curious to see what happens. But anyways, coming to the weekend, obviously, we closed this. I'm going to be talking about this. This was 3 days ago, but we closed with a lot of aggressive ETF buyers, BlackRock ETF IBIT buyers. Again, something we'll be diving into a little more here. I said, going to be patient for this long. This is where I'm long from, right? Waiting for this level, and we'll get into some of this. But so it should be no surprise that as price did come down to this level, that nice back test, I'm taking profits on my shorts, and I am taking that long, right? That's a key level. If price breaks down, I'm going to take a stop loss. I'm perfectly okay with that. I said even willing to trade it twice if I take a stop. If we do wick through it, but we didn't, that ended up being the low of the move. And then I did end up adding on this breakout yesterday, but I've removed the risk from that coming into the week. So I have probably going to get stopped out at break even on that ad, and I'll talk about why I removed that risk. And I started explaining some concepts about that could be interesting about the IBIT order flow that obviously doesn't trade over the weekend, and how that might affect price coming into today's open. But I'm going to dive into that a little more in depth here, because based on a few comments, I don't think these ideas are very clear for people. So it should be no surprise, of course, that I was willing to long into here, because if you were on my, I think it was my last live stream, when price was trading up around 73,000, I was short up here, and I was actually targeting this exact level, right? Important level, 64,660, 1, 2, 3, 4 wicks. If price starts, this is meant to say breaking the ascending structure down, we could run these 4 higher lows very quickly. Very important level. So this is where I'm trading towards, right? From 73,000, looking for longs, taking all that liquidity around 64,600. So, of course, look at the live chart now. It shouldn't be a surprise. I don't know price is going to bounce there, of course, but that I'm interested in trading along off this level, right? This is all of these wicks coming in 64,600 approximately. Now, I don't know exactly how I'm going to explain some of these concepts to people that don't understand order flow at all, but I'm going to do my best. So, um, something that I have been keeping an eye on is the BlackRock ETF order flow. It's been very actionable if you understand some of these concepts. And one of the reasons I'm looking for lower locally here, and we'll see what happens at the open, this is in a few minutes, is because all these aggressive buyers have been getting punished and all the aggressive sellers have been getting punished. I'm going to give a quick example. And of course, I can't, if you want to learn more, if you don't know anything about order flow, links in the description. You can come check out the LATF Discord. There's, you can learn some of these concepts. I'm going to be talking to you as if you understand at least some of the basic concepts. But you can see aggressive buyers coming in here, getting punished. And even on this first dip, this is the grinding downtrend we had last week into our current lows. And some of these sellers who have been getting wrecked at selling into the lows and then getting gapped up on, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment, got wise and they said, hey, let's just buy the dip here. This buyer said, let's not sell the dip, obviously initially selling, but aggressive buying comes in. As soon as that aggressive buying comes in, wrecked again. And then we make new lows, and coming into the week, lots of aggressive buying. And we'll look at how this relates to the Bitcoin chart in a second. So why is this kind of more complicated? Well, there's a couple reasons. I've been thinking a lot about how this liquidity is going to affect Bitcoin's price and how we have some dynamics at play with the weekends, because the thing about the IBIT asset is it doesn't trade. It only trades during normal market hours, so it doesn't trade on the weekend. So let's just take this as a what would punish these traders from the Friday close if price is trading lower than it was. So here it comes now. So price, this is the open right now. Price has gapped down on them, and I might not be able to. I might have to address some of the concepts I'm actually looking for and skip some things. But the basic premise is here: selling into the close, and price has gapped up. So the sellers get punished by the fact that price is trading higher into the new open. As price gaps up, you see aggressive buying, and you see some of these traders get wrecked. What would punish these traders is if price has gapped down from the Friday close. And what you'd really want to see, if we're going to see some of this consistency in the IBIT order flow hold up, is we'd actually want to see some aggressive selling, showing that these traders who have been gapped down on are getting punished into the open. And it might not take price coming down very far, but the reason the price gaps is because the IBIT data, or the IBIT price, is related to the Bitcoin price, right? That's the underlying asset. So Bitcoin trades on the weekend. It can be a new price, a different price from the close on Friday. And so what I pointed out in the Discord today is it'd be interesting to see price trading lower at the close, at the open than it was at the close, just to wreck some of this aggressive buying, and maybe looking for it being more probable to get some continuation to the upside after these traders are wrecked again, because again, they just have been. It's anytime aggressive buying comes in, these traders are being punished. Anytime aggressive selling comes in, the traders are being punished with a move to the upside, and vice versa. So I'm bullish generally from this level I'm long from, but if we're going to have some consistency here, wanting to see some of these traders locally wrecked. We're going to get to the Bitcoin chart here. I'm going to talk about some different scenarios that I'm looking at. But this is the update that I gave earlier. This is a couple hours ago, just saying that it'd be interesting to see this gap, right? We want price to, if it is indeed going to wreck these traders, we want price to be gapped down, because why would you buy into the weekend on IBIT? Well, we showed the example of aggressive sellers coming in before the weekend and price gapping up. So just to imagine it as in a simple scenario, maybe it's the same trader and he says, you know what? Last time I thought price was going to go down over the weekend, and so I sold right before the weekend only to get gapped up on, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I'm going to buy into the weekend this time because I think price, why would you buy? Because you think price is going to go higher. So you buy into the weekend thinking price is going to gap up only to get gap down on again. So, or gap down on this time. That's the idea. But we'll have to see how some of that plays out and maybe keep an eye on some of that order flow. Generally, the other order flow resources that I rely on are bullish. I mean, even IBIT is generally bullish in the broader context. We're just talking about local traders here. That is why I'm going to carry this long. I'm willing to get stopped out if we don't take these lows. And really, I'm just more interested in not shorting, but adding to longs at key levels, seeing how some of this plays out. We do have some key liquidity up here. We could see some aggressive buying come in and then a rotation, or there doesn't have to be one at all. But I'm more looking for opportunities to add, and I might get stopped out of my add here at break even, and I'd add down here. But we'll see how some of this plays out. But we can take a quick look at non-IBIT order flow, as it were. This is just BTC USD perps on Bybit. Just very, very defined bullish absorption into these lows. So, of course, taking this long down here, you really love to see some of this. And then even after this initial rally, you love to see some of this absorption. If I wasn't looking at IBIT at all, this is just even locally pure bullish. And the thing in terms of order flow, and the thing is, I'm long, right? So I still want to be long into this, but I want to start thinking as we have access, well, I have access to some of this data, just how that might interplay with some of these local liquidity. So anyways, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense to the people in the Discord who were maybe unsure what I was referring to with the IBIT data. But I want to keep an eye on that. So we have a gap down. We don't have any aggressive selling as of now. I wouldn't mind seeing some of this wiped out. That could be price going higher and then lower, but it doesn't have to be. But there's not very many times on the charts where the aggressive buyers have not been punished on IBIT. So something to look at locally. All right, let's get into the charts. We're going to talk about some key ideas here. Of course, I'm just going to, I don't actually know if this is a joke because Kevin, I think, shows up in every live stream with essentially the same thing, which is long now, long here, short here. Maybe it's just kind of a joke. My answer is always, of course, well, you can do whatever you want. I like to trade pre-prepared levels, right? So I've explained where I'm long from. I mean, when I was talking about this level, I've been talking about it on Twitter, obviously, all last week as a target for these shorts and a key level to long. Everybody thinks it's ridiculous that Bitcoin could come here. I think it's a really important level, and there's nothing particularly bearish about price coming and taking all this liquidity into this level. I mean, look at it as sometimes you can inverse the charts. I posted this on Twitter as a bit of a joke, but saying, Bitcoin breakout incoming this level, and if we could come down to these levels. So these are the two levels I think have a high probability of generating another move to the upside, which is why I'm long off of them, or one of them. But we have some resistance to clear overhead. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about where I'm willing to take profits on my longs and where I might even actually start to hedge short, because I've closed about 80% of all my shorts. I did have a pretty nice run shorting down into this move, into this level very cleanly. But we have a couple levels here that I'm pretty interested to see how price reacts. And I'll point those out. And where I might look to take a tight invalidation hedge short. One is I want to see how price reacts to these local highs. This is going to be a profit-taking target on my longs. Unless we just rip through them. But if price starts doing this into the open here, rejecting, I'm just going to take profits, remove the risk. I can always look to add back to my position. Better to just lock in those profits. And the other is this wick. We reject it from here. It's a nice point of control. Coming up and retesting this wick. It could also be a retest of this descending structure. Now, of course, is there any reason to be getting super bearish? No, I don't think there's anything bearish about taking profits. I mean, as far as Bitcoin goes, I've taken a lot of longs into this uptrend, and the thing that's worked out quite well for me is these longs, I was targeting all-time highs, and I was willing to take profits up here, and I took longs here. I was willing to take profits. I took more longs, willing to take profits, and I took a short here into this impulse low, willing to take profits. I took longs, just saying, so I'm just basically saying me taking profits isn't a prediction of where price will go. There's just certain things that will trigger that. So in this area of the chart, I took longs, right? If you're obviously anyone in the Discord is going to remember these, taking profits at the highs, and I even added to this long locally, but taking profits at the highs. And then I took a short up here, right? Targeting a breakdown. That short could have gotten stopped out. But the point is, those are only good trades if you take profits. They're not very good trades if you round trip every single long you took. And so again, I like having a long, but I am going to take profits, and I can always add back. So it's certainly possible that price, I know many wouldn't think this is the case. I don't see any reason to be bearish here. I think having longs from these lows is a nice position to be in. Certainly possible to see a rotation down into this wick, in which case I'll be longing that. But that means I'm just going to take a stop. And again, if I take a short here, I'll probably take some profits off of it if we get a rejection. I keep double clicking here. So I might take a short that looks something like this on a clean trigger, back into these lows, but maybe willing to take some profits into this level and let the rest carry on to this and potentially further. We'll just see how price action plays out. But today, for this first couple hours of the open, I'm not longing here. I've, like I said, a long from here and a long with risk removed that it's not going to take much to stop it out. I probably lean towards a local low coming in to wipe out these IBIT traders. So we might see that today, and we'll keep an eye on what happens here. So for me to posit a theory about, something like this order flow, I have to understand the dynamics of the market here, right? And what this all represents. Let's lock there for a second. And I've used some of this IBIT data early on to form the bullish thesis for longing into all of this and for longing into this. And the more and more I look at it, I think a month ago in the Discord, I posted it for the first time and I said, hey, in theory, this data should be some of the cleanest order flow data we have. It might produce a huge edge, but we don't know. We don't have any way to back test it because the data is new. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on it because and it's just proven to be that. I mean, it's so clean. You could kind of say like a new class of traders. The joke in the Discord, you could say the boomers. The boomers are trading Bitcoin now, and they're getting absolutely smoked. So again, so here's some of that selling coming in. This is what I would. So we're gonna look, but we want to see some of this. Some of these traders getting wrecked into the open here. So now we're starting to see some aggressive selling. They've been gapped down on, looking for some local lows to be taken. It could be new lows. I mean, this could bring price much lower, but I think the overall context, even locally, would be bullish once these aggressive buyers that came in Friday are wiped out. So where would that maybe coincide with on the Bitcoin chart? These lows, this would make the most sense. Even coming and retesting this level would be interesting too. And I'm going to be, if I get stopped out but we wick and reclaim, I'll probably just take that long again. But let's see how quickly these IBIT traders unload their positions. I'm going to keep price on the charts here, and this should make sense to everybody. I've already updated in the Discord that I'm removing my long risk here, and I'd be interested in adding to something like this, because this makes a lot of sense. But I'm not going to add if price just runs straight through the level, right? But that's the level I'm watching for now. It's a nice local liquidity level. We have a little impulse, higher low, wipe out some of that liquidity, and maybe get that next impulse to the upside. And if I take a long, I'm just using risk management. If I get stopped out, perfectly fine with me. I'm just trying to make reasonable decisions around how I am interpreting the markets. But anyways, so again, this is just an indication. I mean, I don't want to say it's a cheat code, but it's been pretty reliable so far that this is Friday. Seeing price gap down on these traders makes the most sense, and forcing them to sell at a loss here makes a lot of sense. So not necessarily expecting momentum in the Bitcoin price to carry through the weekend to highs like it might have in this, because here the traders were selling into the weekend and getting gapped up on. Now they're buying into the weekend, aggressive buying, and getting gapped down on. And I understand that most of you have zero clue what I'm talking about, but I'll just say I'm explaining it the best I can, assuming that you're not all well versed in order flow. But essentially, we're looking at the positions traders are taking and how they're taking those positions and where they're taking and when they're taking, and is it aggressive market buying versus passive, limit selling, and vice versa. So but I think I've demonstrated to some degree that I have a pretty strong understanding of order flow, which is applying the principle. It doesn't really matter if I can't necessarily backtest the IBIT data. I understand what would make it compelling. I understand what the data is telling me about the traders that are trading that asset, where they're positioned, and what is going to continue to wreck some of these traders, and what you would expect price to do even from the close, which we closed up here, we want price trading below this aggressive buying. It did, but we don't want it gapped up. We want it gapped down and then forced out, and then maybe we get a continuation to the upside after they're all flushed out of their positions, which is kind of pretty close to happening here. But I honestly, or obviously, am analyzing the market very specifically at key levels, right? So, for example, order flow data changes with new orders. So we'll see how price reacts to these levels. Maybe we get a bounce, and maybe we see something quite bearish later today or tomorrow or the next day. But right now, I think the general context, if we can hold up some of these levels, it's actually bullish, but we need to see some of this local liquidity tested and wiped out. So we can see now the aggressive selling coming in, and these are presumably the traders who were long coming into the close on Friday, now forced to sell at a loss or choosing to sell at a loss because now they're getting more bearish. Somebody's saying, can you cover some more alts? And I'm maybe getting some alts. I mean, I'll cover some alts at some point and I'll share stuff, but probably not on this live stream. I mean, this is a primary trading session for me, and I'm more interested in looking at what is happening on the Bitcoin chart because I'm trading right now. Someone asked, what is the level of this group? I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about the Lucky Apes Trading Floor group or LATF, but I'm not sure what you mean by what is the level. Of course, I lose trades too, and I've actually been trading Bitcoin, I think, phenomenally well through all of this chop, getting just beautiful longs, taking profits. I got some of this shorted here, but covered half of it. I think I took one long loss in here, but like long add, long, taking profits at the highs, long, got a short here, got a short here, and was able to flip the context from this being bullish, choppy uptrend to I'm actually just looking for lower here, holding my shorts deeper and looking for this, which is at this point a very difficult thing to do when this has been your trend, to right as price is actually breaking down lower to flip your perspective to lower instead of longing all of these dips. But again, those are largely order flow decisions. But I took a short. I want to talk about stop. I took a short stop here. So I had long into this impulse, and I had shorted because of this wick. And obviously, if you follow, I think I updated that on Twitter too. But if you're in the Discord, you know I covered a lot of that short, but I actually added back to the short at this point of control retest. And it got stopped out of that because I would have rather just had on the quick reaction a short back in a short position on the retest in case of continuation, which actually would have just been the same idea as this short, right? The big impulse shorting back into the point of control, the SR flip, exact same setup. One worked, one didn't. But obviously, if you know anything about how you structure a trade, and we will be keeping an eye on Bitcoin here as we come to an important level, but this is how I had structured that trade for a 1 hour loss for continuation. But this is how I structured this short with sizing. So with about a 0.67% stop loss into this level. So, hey, I'm pretty happy right now in terms of one short. Let's just say one short makes 20 times more than the other one loses. Just because of how it's invalidated and structured. So win one, lose one. Oh, is the Discord for new or experienced traders? So that's what you're asking, is what's the level of it? Well, there's new traders and experienced traders. So there's a lot of content that's going to go over some basic ideas. So you might have a 15 or 20-minute video on individual concepts, some other materials, all the way from very beginner ideas to more advanced ideas, right? So it's the whole gambit. There's both experienced traders, inexperienced traders. Now, as far as my daily updates, I do my best to really break down the whole point of daily updates and me explaining my trading ideas is to utilize all the stuff that is in some of those educational materials on live charts, right? Because it's really easy. Let's just say, let's just close off some of this for a second. It's really easy to have some kind of educational concept that infers that this is a nice long trigger, but it doesn't look so fun to long there at the time, right? And so, but there's actually principles here that put this as a long trigger. But if you saw it in a textbook and you were trying to duplicate it on your own personal chart, you might be like, no, this does not look like where I want to long. This looks like where I want to short. Everything's breaking down. This is bad. So whatever the concepts are that would have me taking along there, that you might find the similar concepts in the educational materials, what I like to do with the live updates is break down those concepts on a live chart where I have to navigate all the emotions and whatever, because it's not so easy to see an idea in the emotions of live price action. So that's where I'm coming in here. This is all stuff that's explained in the educational content, but I'm demonstrating it on a live chart by actually saying, I'm waiting for this level. This is before the move down, and why. I'm here, what a time to wake up. Wouldn't mind seeing this wick swept before an entry, not discounting the possibility of a breakdown and move below. Watching local PA here for the entry trigger. Close enough for me, I've entered. So this is, again, me just walking through some of that. Doesn't mean the trade's going to win, but I think it's just a much easier way to learn some of this stuff if you have somebody walking through it. So that's the point of the live updates. So the point of that is there are some more advanced topics covered in the live updates. Just keeping an eye that you might not understand as a new trader, and so it's going to take some time to work through maybe some of the educational content on those subjects to understand the live updates. But of course, if I'm utilizing all these different concepts on a live chart every day, I can't explain every concept every day, every time I post about anything. And so that's where you would want to go through the educational content to understand some of those things a little better. All right. Yeah, so I mean, I would say a lot of liquidity has been taken out here, but certainly could argue there's a little bit more. But yeah, generally in this context, this is just more bullish. I wouldn't mind just seeing a little run through some local lows here, but maybe get a tight invalidation local add. And a trade's only as good as your structure. I consider trades that are structured well, even if they take a stop loss, to be good trades. I don't think it's possible to know with 100% certainty what price will do, where it will bounce, and so I'm just looking to take a reasonably structured trades with risk management. And I might take one of those today. Yeah, okay, so someone just saying that, to follow up on that, you've been in groups where there's lower level and many new people don't want that again. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it probably doesn't matter to the average member what the other average member is, because I'm pretty serious and very active. And so I'm not giving signals. Like, for example, if I say, and this is like such an important distinction, I'm sharing the trades I'm taking, the levels I'm watching, the entry triggers I'm taking, like, hey, I'm interested in, I'm preparing to take this long if price reacts here, if we can hold this as support, I'm going to take this long. Hey, I've taken this long, not as a signal, but to explain the concepts, right? In a what I think is a more genuine way, which is not all in hindsight textbook format where it's like, oh, if you had looked here on this day and you could have shorted the exact top of this move, and this would have been a very easy short to take, but actually navigating that on live price action. And that includes taking stop losses, right? So when I'm long here, I'm saying, hey, I'm willing to long this. This is the level I've been waiting for. I will cut this long if price starts breaking down, and I'll look for lower. I have no problem cutting it, but this is a key level. I'm long while it's holding, and the same might happen here. All right, so we're at the new hour. Again, would like to see maybe a little lower, but some pretty nice selling into the open here. Some local selling. Could just hold up some of these local lows. But the premise here, whether or not, whatever we bounce from, or if we just nuke, I mean, that's possible, and I never assume we have to bounce here. But I think the premise here, which was, hey, let's look to trade lower into the open because of how these IBIT traders, that's playing out, right? We've gapped down, and now we're seeing them selling. And what I'd like to see for a nice setup locally is heavy selling and then just price turbo reverse into that selling, punishing now the selling side of the order flow, and after punishing the buying side. Man, I have to take a leak too. I drink a lot of coffee. I'm just updating the Discord because I always forget during live streams, so I'm trying to be better about that. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Okay. And we're not going to, I'm not going to spend a ton of the time on this live stream if we do bounce here. But what I wanted to do is get live a little bit before the open. And this is mostly for the benefit of members and explain some of this order flow stuff. Because I did some write-ups on it a few hours ago. And I think there was, well, at least a few people were confused and didn't understand why I would look for lower locally because of the ETF and how all those, and I can understand it being confusing. So hopefully this was helpful for anyone interested in the concepts. And I wanted to do it before, it's not that big of a deal because I already gave the premise before it happened, but explain it before it happened, because that's one of the reasons you might, if you think about the structure of a trade, when you buy an asset, let's say you go long, well, you're going long because you expect it to go higher, right? So what in your thesis is expecting it to go higher? If price starts going lower, you might structure the trade in such a way that you don't need to be perfect to the penny, but if price is going lower, then your thesis isn't working. So what about your thesis isn't working? Where do you invalidate it? Well, it's important for me when I'm looking at order flow data to have a thesis before price does something and then see it working, right? So I need to express that thesis and say, hey, because of all these reasons, it would make sense for price to be doing this at the open or this at the close, or for price to trap these traders, and then I should see that happen. And if that's not happening, then maybe there's something wrong with how I'm interpreting what's happening to traders in that data. So but all we have is one part of the equation for now, which is the IBIT traders are getting wrecked. Now we don't know if we'll rotate back to the upside, but the first part is happening as I might have liked to see. And this is, yeah, I mean, there's so many things. It's so interesting having, a community. I love the LATF and the people in there, and I think it's a lot of fun. But I do work very hard, and I do some pretty, I think, thoughtful analysis on Bitcoin, let's say. And what I don't want to do is get into a situation where people aren't striving to become better themselves and even better than me, where it feels like, oh, Lucky just does all the work for them, and why would I even analyze Bitcoin because he's just gonna. So that's kind of the double-edged sword. Is I hope people are inspired to learn all this stuff and not just relying on me. And I know many are, and maybe some aren't, but I don't know a better way to teach some of these concepts than demonstrating them. So yeah, that's probably true. Jocelyn says nobody explains more. I do a lot of explaining. So yeah, that's something I don't like to do, is just say like, I'm longing 6,400, stop here, target here. If I'm sharing a trade idea, I'm always wanting to explain the concepts of the trade. The why, right? The why I would cut it, where I would cut it, where I would target, where I would enter, why I would enter. And then you can actually learn something and move some of these alerts. I like to really end up piling alerts around some levels because I just want to, I might be sleeping, and I maybe want to wake up, or I just want to make sure I have a better chance at getting to the chart before the level is hit. So I might get the initial alert, the next alert, the next alert, as price runs into a key level I'm watching. Somebody says, what's the next step generally when LATF member finishes educational content? Well, you should start developing your own trading style for one, and I think with paper trading. Nobody likes to hear that the best place to start when you're new is with no risk. And some people will say, oh, you should have some risk because you need to like develop the emotional kind of skills that it takes to trade. But I think for the vast majority of people, the best place to start is with no risk. So first start with developing these technical ideas, identifying them on the chart, structuring your trades. And there's no reason to put any money at risk when you don't know what you're doing. And then you can start developing a track record and really understanding what you're doing and why, and what the outcomes of those decisions are over the course of many trades. And when you're feeling really confident about your execution and your setups and how you're trading, then you might decide to put some risk on based on your data. And maybe you start really small. You say, I'm going to try this with live funds, but maybe for you, you know, risking $100 over the course of 15 trades isn't a big deal. And so maybe you risk $5 per trade or $7 per trade, whatever it is. I'm just giving an example. And you see how that goes. And you try executing them with live funds. If that goes well, maybe you start risking a little bit more. And I think that's the best way to go. But what people, of course, want to do is they just want to put on tons of risk before they've learned anything, and they get wrecked. We are seeing a little bit of absorption here on Bitcoin. Arguably. So let me just point this out for a second. It's not hard to see it in price as a little idea. Nothing major, but what we're seeing here is, well, this initial sell-off after we gap down, we're just seeing some consistent selling into these lows as we form a little range on the 5-minute chart. A sign that a buyer's stepping in here, holding price up, and we have swept a minor low. So generally, thesis maybe has already played out, and we might not take these lows, especially given the sense that, or the context that this order flow is just hella bullish, both locally and on a high time frame. So I'd be open just to a rally from here as a reasonable idea. Again, wiping out a lot of that initial liquidity. So we're gonna look at some a couple things here, and then we're gonna end the live stream. Let me go to, I'm trying to manage a few screens here. All right. I think this is nice liquidity, but I think it's actually kind of reasonable to think it's a little ambiguous whether price would come down a little lower or bounce from here. I think enough has started to play out here where this is completely reasonable, just taking this local low as where the majority of the liquidity got tapped into the New York Open. And so anyways, like I said, I'm bullish from here, maybe looking for a local entry trigger, but I have longs running, and I'm starting to think that probably more likely that price has already tapped some of this liquidity, and I'm going to explain why in as clear detail as I can. We're going to look at a couple things, and then I'm going to go. All right, so this was about 3 hours ago or so. I said I'll explain this dynamic between the BlackRock ETF weekends and Bitcoin price a little later today. This is what I'm doing now, as I don't think it's as clear as I thought it would be to many of you, just based on some conversations. Basic premise: ETF can only be traded during market hours. Over the weekend, price can gap, as the value of the ETF is based on the underlying asset value, BTC in this case, which trades on the weekend. Bitcoin, we know, trades on the weekend. So people are left in positions over the weekend only to find price trading lower or higher than when the market closed for the weekend. You can see some of these gaps on the chart above. So it'd be interesting to see something like this, for example, price trading below Friday's close, which could just be sideways from here, aggressive selling into the open, and then price rises. So this is what I drew out. This is before the open. I drew 2 lines, a gap, price coming into these lows. This yellow line is me, right? This is their line, or the actual data. This is me just showing the aggressive selling into the gap, and then price rise from there. This was the thesis. All right, so let's go into the order flow. Price, essentially what I drew out here is gap. I drew a gap, price coming down into the lows, aggressive selling into the open on that gap, and then price rotating back to the upside. So we haven't wiped out all of the buying into the weekend, but generally we've wiped out a significant amount of it, especially locally. And so we've taken the lows on IBIT, lots of aggressive selling into the gap. Why can't we rotate to the highs here when the overarching context here is all bullish, especially when we consider the order flow on some of the other exchanges? I'm in longs, happy to carry my longs. Was interested to see how this plays out, because I'm forming more and more theses personally on how I can utilize some of this new data around things like weekends and trading, like market hours. So, whatever, we'll see. I think I'm going to be able to utilize. I think it seems like it could be one of the biggest edges that, at least for me, that I'm personally capable of producing in terms of local pivots and things like that. So I'm pretty excited to continue to dive into this type of data and see in what ways I could utilize it in some of my decision making. But of course, the markets are just a game of probabilities, and so we're playing the probabilities. Currently looking for these highs is a major idea. I think generally no reason to be bearish on this test of this structure. If order flow changes, then I'm going to take that into account. These local lows, kind of all important, and this is important. I mean, anything like this, I'm going to be long off of. And if we break down, I'm looking for that. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think I have a reasonable thesis for it. And I've managed my risk in such a way that I truly don't care what happens. I mean, even shorting from the highs here, I guess I'll leave on this note, and I think this is important. Even shorting from the highs here, I was perfectly fine. And I said at the time, I'm sure if we break out, I'll just cut it. I would rather have shorts up here, and I explained some of that IBIT data as part of the thesis. I truly would have been perfectly fine to be stopped out. I'm in a big winner. I took this long. Truly would have been perfectly fine to be stopped out, because I think I'm just putting on a reasonable position that either works or it doesn't, but the risk reward of it working is quite good. And what I wanted to say is, if you didn't short the top here or along the bottom, that's fine. That's not your actual responsibility as a trader. Your responsibility is not to get absolutely smoked by the market. So whether you didn't take any trades in here, you took a losing trade or 2 losing trades, your only goal is to not get destroyed by the market, and you do that by using risk management. So more importantly than catching every trade, your responsibility is not to get wrecked, right? There's always going to be trade opportunities. And so, again, my primary responsibility trading these levels is to not get wrecked. Anyways, I appreciate everybody. I'm going to sign off for the day, and we're going to see how some of these levels play out into the rest of the day. I think local levels, this would be kind of nice to tap, frankly, and I wouldn't even be so opposed to coming and sweeping these lows again, but we'll see how it plays out.